My name is Zhining, and my partners are Jeffrey, Ellie, and Avery. We did a usability test on a dual-band AM and FM clock radio with a sample size of 3 users. We chose 3 undergraduate UW students who have early classes and use alarm clocks on a regular basis. We conducted a study in Odgar Undergraduate Library. We had each user complete 3 tasks. Our 3 tasks were setting the time, setting an alarm, and turning on to and turn off the radio. We chose these tasks because we believe they're the most common functions used with the alarm clock.
Our tasks each had 3 metrics with which we measured them. Our metrics were timing the completion of the task, difficulty scale, and thinking out loud and asking the user questions. We also used observational notes that we took throughout the test. We chose these metrics because we believed they'd give us the most supplementary information about what the user was doing and what they were thinking. For the first task, we had each user set the time on the clock. User 1 completed the task in 22 seconds, while the other users took longer, 2 minutes and 45 seconds and 2 minutes and 13 seconds respectively. All 3 users did not like having to hold down the buttons as they set the time and felt that it was unclear how to complete the task just using the labels on the buttons. We noticed that all 3 users resulted to pressing all the buttons to see what they did.
For the second task, we had the users set the alarm clock. The third user completed the task in 15 seconds, and the first 2 users took 24 seconds and 1 minute and 34 seconds respectively. Each user has an easier time completing this task because it was very similar to completing the first task. We found that all 3 users had a harder time with the first task, and after they had gotten more familiar with which buttons did what, they completed the second task much quicker. For the last task, we had each user turn on the radio as well as tune it to a station. For the first user, it took 12 seconds to complete the task, and the second and third user took 46 seconds and 38 seconds to complete the task, respectively. The users all expressed that the task was easier because of the simplistic on-off switch that was labeled clearly. We found that throughout the testing, the users were all noticeably less frustrated when they had clearly labeled buttons and dials that were intuitive to use.
Following the usability testing, we have a few recommendations for Puffco designs as to how they can improve their product. The users want clearly labeled buttons that you don't have to hold down while you set the timer or the alarm. The buttons that are already labeled should be renamed from time to set time. The users also really wanted some method of going up and down through the numbers when setting the timer or the alarm instead of having to go through the entire number cycle if they went past their desired number. In addition, the users wanted to be able to hold the button when scrolling through the numbers instead of having to repeatedly press the button to change the number. The users like the position and size of the snooze button and the dim clock face. Lastly, Puffco should make a clear distinction between when the user is setting the time and when the user is setting the alarm, as most of our users couldn't tell which one they were setting. If we had to improve our usability testing method for a future test, we'd increase our sample size to get a wider view of how the users felt about the product. We'd also widen our sample size to include more than just college students to adults who also have to get up early in the morning. Lastly, we'd lengthen the test to include all the functions of the radio instead of having to pick 3 we felt were the most commonly used.